Hello guys, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to talk about how to knit a mitered square. It is been just a fun, simple knit. Like it really is. Like yes, there's some little extra things like picking up along the sides of the squares to add on the next square. Like there's certain little things that might be considered hard, but honestly, once you learn them, you're like, oh, that's really simple. So it's a great movie watching project or that like mindless knitting that sometimes I just always like to have around, right? Like I like to have that one project. And then also just as for beginners, I'd say this is a really good beginning project. I'm casting on with the old Norwegian method, and I started using this method when I really got into sock knitting, and it was just the recommended like stretchy cast on method. So I started using it and I like it, and I kind of just have a rhythm with it, which is something I find with knitting. It's like there are certain stitches and ways of doing things. If you find your rhythm, like that's just the way you're going to always do it if you can. And it's just kind of the funness of knitting is we all have these different ways. And yes, there's certain ways that you want to, do something correct or not correctly, but like a certain way or like a pattern. You're following someone's pattern, so you do a stitch the way they say to do it, so it looks like their pattern. But otherwise, it's like there's just a lot of little extra, just personal touches that we each put into every single thing we create, which I think is part of the coolness of knitting. Is just there's so many different ways of doing the exact same thing, and when you choose whatever method you like, that's like your signature on your on your project. Okay, now that I've cast on the 36, I put a stitch marker in, and then I'm going to be picking up along the edge of the square I made, and I pick up in between each ridge. So like it's really easy when you do that, because that means every time you pick up stitches, okay, I just pick up in that space in between the ridges, and I pick up underneath both bars that are there, and it works really, really well. It makes it really consistent and neat and tidy, which I really like and think is very important in this type of blanket. Like when you choose to do a really simple project, you also just want to really focus on the little details that just make it super tidy and look right. Okay, so all you're going to be doing is continuing picking up the stitches along the edge, and rest assured, once you realize like how simple this is, it goes quite fast, which is nice. And I like stuff like that. And I like that with knitting in general. Like once you learn the stitch and like realize like, oh, it all just kind of works. Once you know how to wield your knitting needles and yarn, you can overall just start learning how to do all the things. And of course, because I'm me, I will be recounting all my stitches because I don't want to take any chances of my squares not being the right size. And then where the stitch marker is, yes, there's a little bit of yarn. That has not been an issue yet, like at all. Like my edges are really nice and neat and there's no weird gaps. But if there is, I do have the yarn tail right there that I can close it up if necessary, and it's okay. So again, cast on the amount of stitches that you need for one side, put the stitch marker in, and then pick up or cast on the other set of stitches, depending if you're in the middle of a row or if you're starting your first square. So there you go. Okay, so I already did what's called the wrong side. So I literally, like row one, you just knit across and you get back to the right side of your project. So this is really simple. Like literally, guys, the simplicity of this is so pleasant. So literally, you're just knitting two stitches before the stitch marker, and then that's when the big thing happens. And I will say, because you're going to be doing some decreases, I have seen, I think 3 or 4 different ways that people decrease for the mitered square. It's kind of up to you. I played around with a few different ways, and I found what I'm doing to be what I feel like is the quickest. So you kind of got to find what works for your favorite way of decreasing, because that's the thing. I think part of it is a little bit of a rhythm, like what's your rhythm, what's your favorite decrease. And so I'm knitting to the stitch marker, and I will be doing just basic knit 2 together. So that one is always just an easy one. Like that's like the first thing I feel like, no, I know that's the first decrease I learned like as a small child. So I will be knitting 2 together, just straightforward, simple, good old fashioned knit 2 together, slip the stitch marker over, and then I'm actually knitting 2 together through the back loop. And I've seen SSK is actually being the more common way of doing that. So I looked up like why or why not, like what's the difference between the two, and the knit 2 through the back loop like has a little bit of a twist to it. So like we're twisting the stitches a little weird. And on some things that will look funny, but because of how this blanket is with the ridges of knitting, I can't tell like where, like you can't tell, like it's very well hidden. So I could do SSK, and you definitely can if that's like your favorite way of doing decrease, then like totally do it. I just noticed that through knitting through the back loops, knitting 2 together through the back loops was like just so simple, because like SSK you technically do like the 2 steps of slipping the stitches and rotating them and then knitting them. So it's like this funny thing where it's like that's also not hard. So it's like a good way of doing it as well. Plus I'm guessing if you really started looking to all the different versions, you could do other forms of decreasing. Okay, so I'm on the wrong side, and I'm literally just knitting right over the decrease, just straight knit. Just knit that row through. Nothing complicated whatsoever. And let's see here. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it's really just that simple and straightforward. Like, it's just keep on knitting. On the right side rows, we do the decreases. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. So some people do a 3-stitch decrease in the center there, and I have not even tried that method. So I'm thinking if you do a 3-stitch one, you probably will cast on an uneven amount of stitches, but I'm not positive because I haven't actually done that method of doing it. So we're on the right side again, so knitting through until we're 2 stitches before the stitch marker. And then we'll knit 2 together and then knit 2 together through the back loop. So here we are, a few rows in, and you can see the line down the center. And I've even thought like you could probably get a little bit fancy on like that line down the center and make it prettier looking. Oh yeah, and I slip the first stitch. So I guess there's that. But even that, so here's the thing. I started doing a certain way of making this, and I've wondered since then if it really matters. But because I'm already like on my 3rd row, I'm not going to change up how I'm doing these. And I might in the future like play around with it a bit more and be like, does it really matter? Okay, so going to give you another look. Knit 2 stitches. We knitted up to the stitch marker. Knit 2 stitches together. Super simple and straightforward. It is simple and straightforward, but I'm telling you, my fingers get like camera shy. Like everything that runs smooth suddenly will like all mess up. But hey, that's okay. And then you knit 2 through the back loop, which is that simple. There we go. And then you knit to the end. And then again, there's one more step where when I get to the end, I knit through the back loop for the last stitch. But it's a step that I'm like, I don't know if it makes a difference, but my edges are so crisp and clean. I feel like it has to be making a difference, but I'm not going to play around with it because I want it all to stay the same. So, yep. And then last stitch, I knit through the back loop. And then we just keep knitting wrong side, just knit, plain and simple. Slip the first stitch, knit to the end, knit through the back loop of the last stitch. And I'm like, I will say this over and over again, I'm not even sure if this step matters, but because I started it that way, I don't want to make my squares look funny. But as I'm saying this to you, I'm like, man, I should probably just do one where I don't slip any of this stuff, you know, and just see if I even notice the difference. Because if it's in the center, it probably shouldn't make that big of a difference. All right, so we'll see. Maybe I'll be back on another video and be like, guys, guess what? I didn't slip any of the stitches and it made no difference. But I think the concept behind slipping is just to give a nice tidy edge. And it might also make it easier for when you're picking up stitches. That's the part that I'm like, that might be the key, which, I don't know. I just like how, like, look how sharp and tidy that edge is in that corner. That's what the backside of it looks like. So you can just kind of see like where I picked up, and then, you know, along the decrease section, just kind of how it looks like. There's a little like indent there, and there's a little ridge on the other side. So there is our mitered squares. And you just keep doing this until you have 2 stitches left, and then let's see, how did I do that? I literally did basic bind off. So anyway, guys, I hope you have a good day. Bye.